right. Well, hey everybody, I'm Greg Pruett with Pruett Family Farm, and we wanted to kind of interview some people about the farm life and the importance of farming. And so I thought, what better person than my grandpa, who's been living that life for a very long time now. And so we're gonna have a little chat, Grandpa, and you have to answer all the questions. That was the agreement beforehand. So this is life confessions.
I'll if I answer the ones I want.
That works too. So, and Grandpa, how old are you now, Grandpa?
96.
96. Wow, that's awesome.
And just about a half.
And a half. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We're going for triple digits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I wanted to, for kind of family history and stuff too. What do you remember kind of your dad, and when he came to America, kind of at what point did he get farming, and then what kind of farming did he do?
Dad came when he was 12 years old. A missionary brought him to Star Valley. And he lived in freedom at the time. And that missionary wasn't very nice to him. He'd make him go off and work for the neighbors, and he'd take all the money. And there was I've got to think a minute to find Hyde lived in freedom at the time, and he was going to come to bought a place in Grover. And so he asked Dad if he would come with him. He needed somebody to help him on the farm. And so that's how he got to Grover. They lived just a mile south of Grover. And he came when he was 12, so he was probably around 15 when he came to Grover. Of course, Mother lived here in Grover, and Mother was 2 years older than Dad. And they met and fell in love, and that was it.
That's all she wrote, huh?
Yeah.
And so when your dad and Mom got married, did they do other work on top of farming, or did they just have a farm that they put together?
Well, most of the time they worked for somebody else that had a farm.
Okay.
When they first got married, Mother's sister's husband was called on a mission for 3 years. And Mother and Dad lived with her sister, and Dad run his farm while he was on his mission. He went on a mission to Sweden.
Okay.
And he never did have a farm till it was his own, till he bought the place here where we live. Only the house was in the bottom of the field. And this was the first farm he had. But during the Depression, nobody could make their payments, and they lost it. In the meantime, several other owners owned it. And that just after me and Grandma got married, it came for sale. And a good friend of mine that was the same age as me owned it. And anyway, I didn't have any money, so Grandpa Hale bought it. And I rented it from him for 3 or 4 years till I could get enough money to start paying. We got a loan and bought it from him. Me and my wife lived here. We moved here in October That year we farmed it this summer, but the house was in the bottom of the field, and we moved it up and built half of it, this half on to it. And that was in 1958. We was married in 59. But it was February of 49.
Yeah, 49. Yeah, because I was born in 58.
Anyway, and so me and Grandma lived here practically all but just a few months. We lived on this place. And then we bought the dry farm, and we just farmed all the time, but farming was hard. Nobody could make enough money to farm it without a side job, so I went to work at the airplane factory. I worked there 28 years. In the meantime, we bought the dry farm. The kids own it now.
Why is it, or what was so hard to, I mean, even now it sounds like a lot of farmers have a hard time making much money. Why do you think, I mean, food is our most important resource. Why do you think it's so hard to make money farming?
Yeah, farming's still hard to make money on. At one time, they had a drought in Star Valley, and the government come in, and they didn't have enough hay to feed the cattle. The government come in, and not only in Star Valley, but practically the whole nation.
Yeah.
And bought cows. They bought them for $11 a head.
Jeez.
And Dad lost the farm, and he moved to Grover. He worked for the county for a lot of years as a weed sprayer. And when me and Lona got married, why, I had a good friend that owned this, and he was going to move to Idaho. And so Grandpa Hale bought it because I didn't have any money. And then later we bought it from Grandpa Hale. But we moved here in 49, maybe 48, probably 48, because we bought it in the spring and we moved down there in that fall when we farmed here, and then we bought me and my brother bought the part of the dry farm that I had, and we farmed together for a while, and then we divided up. And I bought another piece of property, which I sold to Terry when I retired, and the other part to Gary and Eddie. Terry sold his, but Eddie says they're never going to sell theirs.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, they sell them, they'll put another subdivision in.
Yeah.
So what kind of crops when your dad owned his own farm, what kind of crops did he do, and did you do that growing up with him, helping him?
Well, they mostly alfalfa, but a small amount of grain.
Okay.
But you had to have alfalfa or meadow hay for your cows, but he raised mostly hay, because the more cows you had, the more it's hard to make a living unless you had a pretty good sized herd of cows.
So you guys had quite a few cows growing up?
We had about 10 or 12.
Okay.
So, but everybody had that many.
Yeah. Mostly dairy?
Everybody had cows.
Yeah.
Dairy cows. There was a few beef cows, farmers that had big ground, a lot of ground, but most people just had milk cows.
So when you took over the farm, did
There
you?
was a lot of time in between. Grandpa lost the farm when, in fact, I think Grandpa lost the farm and we moved off of here, I was in the 6th grade.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of years passed between that and the time I bought
Bought
it.
Yeah. Okay. So when you finally got the farm back, for the family, was there already farming happening on the land and you just kind of took over?
It was all farmed.
Yeah.
In fact, I bought it for a good friend that he sold it and he moved to Emmett, Idaho and bought a bigger place.
Okay.
And then me and my brother bought the dry farm together. And then later on, I bought another 40 to go with it.
Did you farm out of necessity, or did you farm because you liked it, or a little bit of both?
I farmed because I liked it. And most of those years while I farmed, I worked an 8-hour day at the airplane factory.
It's a lot of work.
You had to have a lot of acres
Yeah.
if you made enough money to live for a family to live on. Most everybody had a second job.
Did your kids all love farming, working the farm for you, or did they hate it?
Gary and Terry helped farm, but Ev never did.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. He had a friend that's dad owned a construction company, and then he worked for the construction company all the time
Okay.
till a few years ago he decided he liked to farm. Him and Gary runs this place here.
You guys had some cows when you had the
I
farm.
milk cows all the time.
Any other livestock that you did?
Never did have any beef cows,
Okay.
just milk cows.
You had chickens though, I hear.
I never was a
No?
chicken farmer.
Not a farmer.
I was strictly
He had a
dairy. We didn't have pigs or chickens or sheep.
Yeah. So did you ever try different crops, or did you mostly do the alfalfa and?
Alfalfa and grain.
Yeah.
And that's most of what everybody, well, the meadows, of course, raise grass hay, but there's grain and hay is about the only thing they raise in Star Valley.
Is that the easiest thing to do here? Is that why they
No.
do that as opposed to corn or?
Corn or potatoes, we don't have a long enough season for them.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's this, like Gary can raise a little patch of corn up there because the canyon breeze, it keeps the frost off.
Okay.
But most places but it's getting, climate change I can see. We used to have troubles with things freezing, but we haven't had a frost in the summer for years like they used to. And I sold the dry farm to the kids quite a few years ago. When I retired, I decided they could do it better than I could.
Was that when you retired from the factory?
Airplane, yeah.
Yeah. And then you said, I'm done with the planes, I'm done with the farming, I'm just gonna live my life.
Yep.
He
So-
helped out for a lot of years, though.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I still helped with everything.
Yeah, lots of wisdom to impart.
Well, up until just a couple of years ago, I always helped on the farm. But both of them had kids big enough that he did.
Is there a lot of farmland disappearing here in Star Valley?
I don't think there's half as much farmed as there used to be. too many houses and
Yeah.
city people's bought and moved in, and Grover ain't so much that way. Most of it's still farm, but you drive through the valley, and especially the lower valley, you see fields after field after field that's never touched.
Yeah.
But in Grover, there isn't any of that. Most of it still farmed. Farming's a hard thing to make a living at. You've got to have a lot of acres. And Dad runs a lot of acres, but he still can't make a living off of it. If he had to live off of his profits on grain, he couldn't do it.
Yeah. So you almost have to do it because you love it, and then
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
extra work.
Yeah, Ed has a good job he works at. That keeps the farm going.
What did Grandma, was she loved going out and helping you on the farm? And
Grandma helped milk for a while.
okay.
Well, I milked by hand, but when I got to milk her, she says that's the end. She never milked anymore.
Well, she still took care of things around the farm, though.
Nope.
Helped you out around the house,
Yeah,
obviously.
we had 3 meals a day, and when we come in from milking the cows, we had breakfast. We ate breakfast as a family together every morning.
Do you think people would, like families, would be benefit from maybe having their own, like we're starting a backyard farm, right? Just to have our own chickens to feed ourselves, and maybe get some other animals and have a big garden to, at least take care of ourselves if we have to.
Yeah. Back then, everybody had a garden. We always had a big garden till after all the kids was gone. We raised our own potatoes, and we raised peas. It Lona canned all the time.
Okay.
And we had carrots and beets we put in the basement for winter. You had to like to farm or you didn't do it,
Yeah.
because you didn't do it for the money
Yeah.
unless you had a big, like I say, a big farm.
What time are you usually up in the morning when you were farming?
Well, I had to be to work at 8 o'clock, so we was up at 5 o'clock, milked the cows, and in the winter we'd have to hook up a team and feed the cows outside and clean the barns and take care of them and be to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Come home and do the farming after work at night. But we had a good life.
Yeah. So what time did you finally get done each day? After
Well,
farming, working, and then farming some more?
In the summer, a lot of times we farmed till 10 o'clock at night.
Ooh.
When we was planting grain and everything, I had to do all the farming after 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Milked the cows before and after.
Couple times a day.
The cows, somebody was always, when we was farming, was running the tractors. All the others was doing the milking the cows, everything. But we all liked it. Eddie never liked farming. He never did work on the farm. He had a buddy that's dad owned a construction company, and all summer he worked for a construction company. Now he's the one that wants to farm.
Yeah.
He's the farmer. He's got about 600 acres he plants.
Do you ever, growing up, or I guess any time after you retired, did you ever look back and go, I wish I would have done something differently rather than farming, or are you glad that you did it?
I wouldn't have changed my life for anything. If I had it to do over, I'd probably do worse than I've done this time.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good life. I think my kids had just as much as any other kids in town. There might have been a family or two that had more than them, but I think anything, basically, they maybe not had all they wanted, but they had all they needed.
Yeah. Well, that's all that matters in the end, right?
Huh?
So that's all that matters in the end, making sure you have what you need.
I don't think they suffered very much.
We didn't.
When I milk cows, the creamery would divide your milk up, or they'd take part of your check to go. Each one of my kids always had a milk check.
Yeah, okay.
Every other month, every 2 weeks, they'd get a paycheck from the creamery. They never asked me for any money, if they had to live on what they got. I know there was a lot of kids had more than them, but I think they had sufficient.
What's a funny story from when you were farming? What's one of the funniest memories you have of being on the farm?
Well, one time, I had to drive on the tractor and had a shovel with a bucket on it. And it had a lever you pulled to trip the bucket. And Gary was going down the field to do something, and he wanted to ride in the bucket, and we did. And there was just a little bolt that went into the top of the bucket, so that when you pulled the lever, tripped the bucket to dump it. And the truck was bouncing like this. That bucket dumped Gary out in front. It was good enough, the bucket was high enough that it went over top of him.
Oh,
I got it stopped, but he was going back between the front wheels when I got stopped.
Oh, geez.
It's funny now, but it wasn't
I was
then.
gonna say, that sounds like a scary story.
Yeah.
Did he ever ride in the bucket again?
No.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Nowadays, the buckets just had a pin and you pull the lever. Now all the buckets is operated hydraulically, so that couldn't happen
Yeah.
unless you push the lever to dump it.
Did you tell Grandma about it after it happened, or did
Yeah.
you keep it quiet?
That wasn't half as scary. I went up, Doc didn't have a tractor with a shovel on it. And I went up to clean his driveway in the winter. And Gary rode the tractor with me, and I was pushing the snow back, push it up and dump it back up and push up another one. And I pushed up and dumped it and started backing up. I could hear Doc screaming. I stopped right quick, and Gary had run up behind me, and I knocked him over, and he was sitting like this, straddle of the back wheel, sitting right there.
Ooh.
Pretty tough.
Yeah, holy cow. Oh,
Farms are
that's
dangerous.
scary. Yeah, they are dangerous.
That's kids.
Yeah, that too.
We was down the field, we was in we had a four-wheeler riding. Well, like one we got now. Anyway, We got down there and damn skunk was going across the field, and we was doing something else. Gary was, he was 5 maybe, and all of a sudden we looked over and Gary was headed for the skunk. Reached down and grabbed his tail.
And spray him?
Sprayed him, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine. Did it claw him or bite him or anything?
No, it was running away from him
Oh, okay.
when he grabbed his tail, and of course he turned it loose. And
He thought it was his cat.
Lona washed them clothes
Uh,
and hung them out, and washed them and hung them out. We finally had to burn them.
yeah.
We never could get the skunk smell
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
overalls.
Yeah, I imagine burning them was the quickest way to get rid of it.
Somebody told us you could wash their clothes in tomato juice and take the smell away. And we washed them in tomato juice and everything, but when they was dry, they didn't stink bad. If they had a little moisture on them, we had to finally burn them.
Yeah.
We was out farming, hauling bales on the dry farm. Pretty steep hill. She was driving the truck while I stacked the bales on the bale wagon, or we had the bale wagon, and Gary and Terry set the bales up, and I stacked on the wagon. And mouse was running along the ground, and Gary grabbed that mouse. And just as you go into our place, where it drops off to the west, pretty steep. Steep as you about far. Anyway, he grabbed that mouse and opened the passenger door and set the mouse on the seat. And Lona just opened the door and bailed out the other side. And the pickup was going down the hill. And there, if you go into our place out there, you go, that big east piece drops right into that big gully. We was all scrambling, trying to get in the track to get it stopped before it hit the gully. But she never, and then the hell of it was, the mouse jumped off the seat, under the seat, and then she wouldn't get back in. Took us a half a day to get the mouse out of the truck. He was up in the cushions underneath and all over.
Yeah.
We finally got him out. It's funny now, but it wasn't then.
That's how it always is with stories, right? They're always funny later on, but
Yeah.
at the time they're not so funny.
Used to haul bales off the dry farm with a tractor. And, I had 2 wagons. I'd load one wagon with the tractor and then put a pickup on it. The pickup, I could hold it back with the pickup. But Terry was driving the tractor and I was on the pickup, and I says, now when you go off of that hill, you put it down in the low gear. So it'll hold it back. Well, they was only supposed to load 50 bales on the wagon. Instead of that, they put 100. So when they started down the hill, out here just not too far out that hill, it was heavier than the tractor, and pretty soon the tractor the wheels was going backwards instead of front.
I know.
It was off the road and back and forth. Finally got it stopped down on the flat. But when I wasn't around, they just tell me this, because I had told them to only put 50 bales on, but they was going to bring in 100 instead of 50. They didn't only do take 50 from then on,
Yeah.
because that was push that little weight, load like twice with that tractor. When they was pushing it, it'd make the wheels go backwards.
Yeah.
And Gary and I were sitting on top of the hay.
Oh no.
Scary as heck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Grandpa, do you have any other stories that you want to tell that doesn't have to be funny, but you know, any other stories you think would be important for kids?
And I want to tell you one. When I was a scout, our scout leader always had horses, and he was run cattle on Grays River. So he says, "I want to take you kids on a horseback ride, all of us." There was about 15 of us, and they had 2 pack horses, 2 pack mules and a pack horse we had. Packed our bedding and our groceries. And we rode our horses up Grover Park and over and down up Willow Creek, down over the top onto Grays River. Spent the first night. The next day we rode up Grays River to Three Forks to go up to Barstow Lake. And the leader had always run cattle on Grays River, and he knew all the trails. So he says, "We'll go up to Barstow Lake. We'll hit the high fire trail," he called it. And ride along the Hart and then come back home. And we had saved weenies. We had weenies, and of course we was up there 3 days, hot, last part of June. And when we went to have the weenies the last night, they was starting to spoil. But that's the only thing we had to eat, so we all roasted the weenies, figured that'd kill everything, but the next day, it'd give us all the diarrhea. And as you go up Willow Creek, you go over the head of Strawberry. Strawberry comes up and goes like this, and Willow Creek comes up here. And you have to cross the head of Strawberry to get before you can go down Willow Creek to Grays River. And there was still snow in there. Big snow drift. It's a big bare side hill like this. And then snow slides. And we had to cross that snow slide. When we went up, one of the horses slipped and fell. And it was a pack horse, not one we was riding. We all got off and walked across and let our horses. But the one of the pack horses slipped on the snow and went down and slid down to the bottom. And we brought a bottle of pickles, gallon bottle of pickles, to come out of the pack. And on that snow, and man, did it go down that hill. But it slid out on the bottom and there was no rocks. Didn't even break. We all saved the weenies till last night, and when they was starting to get spoiled, we all ate them anyway. The next day when we come home, going across that things, the dire hit us all. Everybody was out on that snowbank, dropping their drawers. No toilet paper.
Oh man. Good times.
So you can wipe your butt with a handful of snow. You know, we were strung out
One of
there.
those stories that probably wasn't funny at the time.
Yeah. That was a good trip.
With so much farmland disappearing everywhere, you know, what is the future of farming, do you think, if we can't keep farms open and keep people doing it because there's no money in it?
You gotta like it or you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
'Cause unless you've got a lot of acres, and now at the price you'd have to pay today, you just can't buy. When we was buying ground, when we bought the dry farm, we give $100 an acre for it.
Oh, that's nice.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't know how much you'd have to pay. Several.
A lot more.
You're lucky if you could buy it for, I don't know. A lot of us going for $1,000 an acre.
Yeah.
There's no way you can farm and pay that kind of money.
Yeah.
Everybody farmed every foot of it. Now you can see field after field after field that nothing's done with, because you just can't make any money at it. When I farmed, we bought gas for 25 cents a gallon.
It's a little bit more now.
Yeah. And basically, the the grain we sell now isn't a lot more per per ton than it was then.
Well, Grandpa, is there any questions I can ask you that you won't answer?
Not that I know of.
Well, I appreciate you doing an interview. We're sure glad that you did all the hard work and taught all your kids hard work, and I'm just gonna...
And one thing it accomplished, it taught my kids to work
Yeah.
and how to work. For the time they was that size, they were driving tractors.
Yeah.
I did a lot of, Tammy even drove tractor.
Well, Grandpa, we sure appreciate you. Glad you let me do the interview.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome.
All right, well, we love you.
And we love you kids too. Yeah. It was a good life.